Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, Hindu, 25th February 2016. The first article is related to the ongoing debate on nationalism. And it's a beautiful article to understand the nationalism in different perspectives and to give a strong hold on how your argument has to be based on. Now, the author differentiates the nationalism into three varieties. One is cultural nationalism, territorial nationalism, and progressive nationalism. The cultural nationalism is a majority construct. It sees India as a land of Hindus and certain identities centered around the religion. So, this cultural nationalism, it sees any other debate or any other religious practice is alien to this land, and it tries to incorporate a particular set of ideology as a character of nationalism. On the other hand, the territorial nationalism, it sees nationalism confined to certain boundaries. It tries to accommodate or adjust the diversities, but it will not work towards reduction of the disparities. The unity in diversity, Indian national movement, everyone have promoted for the territorial nationalism. So here, the sense of nationalism keeps the people together. So on the other hand, it also provides for the strengthening of the nation state, either through maintenance of a strong armed forces, nuclear power, etc. On the other hand, progressive nationalism, it works towards the reduction of the disparities, development of the poor and marginalized, promotion of hunger-free world. All these things we come under progressive nationalism. A development that has reached to the grassroots level is the outcome of the progressive nationalism. So in this context, the governments have to differentiate and facilitate for this progressive nationalism. So if you talk about Kannaiya Kumar, or if you talk about the demands of the various human rights activists, or if you talk about what is happening with regard to the mineral belt of India, everything, every movement, it is centered around this progressive nationalism. Now if you see Rabindranath Tagore's ideas on nationalism, he always rejected the nation as a geographical or a territorial entity, and a sense filled with the ultra-nationalism is going to cause the pain to the humanity. So what he suggested is, in the universal ideas or values, the nation is just a framework to organize them. So we have to understand the nation from the wider aspect of universal understanding. Similarly, if you see Gandhiji's talisman, it also says decreasing the pain of weak and marginalized, it has to be the objective of a nationalist. So in this context, the Indian state has to strive for the progressive nationalism. Now, the progressive nationalism also provides for the various solutions, innovative solutions to the existing problems. For example, a territorial nationalism prohibits any discussion on the Kashmir, and a progressive nationalism tries to find out a solution to the issues such as Kashmir and Siachen. So, innovativeness only comes through the progressive nationalism. Coming to cashless transactions. So, the government has given nod for certain steps towards the cashless transactions. Now, observe the situation how it is. If I go to a shop and buy something, the shopkeeper is going to charge extra money if I want to pay them through the through the card. Why? Because the bank charges certain percentage of the transaction from him. So, that percentage of the transaction he wants to shift to the customer. So, there is no incentive for the shop owner who wants to evade the tax, and also there is no incentive for the customer. So, in this case, this particular merchant discount rate is going to be eliminated. And at all the shops, we don't get these vending machines to transact through cards. So, the development or creation of the electronic infrastructure for transactions, and especially in the government offices. And the next is, beyond a certain limit, if you are buying or selling something, it has to be only through card transactions. So this will reduce the role of the cash transactions in our economy, which in turn has many repercussions, decreases the tax evasion, black money role, and decreases the expenditure the government has to made to maintain the cash flows. Now, we have seen yesterday in Indian Express News that there is the Sweden has totally becoming cashless by 2030. The major reason is fast adaptation of the technology. Even the cards are becoming redundant in Sweden, and they are moving more towards the mobile application based payment or transactions. Now, Swish or iZettle, these are the applications that are widely used in Switzerland. Now, in this case, what the other author argues with regard to this perspective is this. In India, we have to incentivize the buyer, that is the customer, to pay on card. So for this, an extra tax incentives, either income tax incentive, can be given to the buyer to move forward towards the card transactions. The repercussions of this will be very high with regard to the pan-economic benefits. Now, the human rights in India, coming to this, the Chhattisgarh and an attack on Soni Sori. Observe here, now the government is perceiving a particular model of development that is centered around growth and globalization. Now, this is leading to displacement of certain tribal population, especially across the mineral belt of the country. And Chhattisgarh squarely falls into this mineral belt. And everywhere in the world, the government perceived notion of development and the civil society perceived notion of development, they are coming in conflict with each other. So in this case, the atrocities against the Dalit, the tribals and the civil society members are increasing, and the state is using the extraordinary measures to control or muffle the voice of these civil society members. The recent attacks on the Soni Sori can be seen from this particular dimension. Understand, if the country has to be developed and it has to be an inclusive development, then only the country's economic stability can move forward. So if the development is occurring at the cost of certain sections of the society, then the development is leading to the huge the human rights violations. Coming to the goodwill with Kashmir. Now we know that KP Sharma Oli, the Prime Minister of Nepal, has visited India. Now, if you see from the past, a bitterness was set in between India and Nepal. So Nepal was very a close ally to India. The Prime Minister Modi's visit to Nepal twice, it has set the things in order and generated a huge goodwill. After the earthquake, India has liberally announced for $1 billion of reconstruction aid. And along with this, there are another $1 billion is also offered towards the developmental projects. So in this context, the Madhesi agitation following the new constitutional building exercise and framing of the constitution has led to the discomfort between these two countries. In this context, so India and fearing the Madhesi agitation, so they did not allow for the movement of the goods across the border. Or diplomatically, I can use this way. So the Madheshi blockade has led to the India-Nepal border closure and stalling of the movement of the goods across the border. So in this context, Nepal inferred that as a blockade. It has even went to the international forums. So in this context, the Nepal has repeatedly used the China card. So the present visit is expected to close all this bitterness and to take forward the relations. So now, the Nepal and India shall realize that they are having the open borders. So in these open borders, any threat in Nepal or any agitation in Nepal will have a spillover effects on Indian borders. And Nepal shall be sensitive to this. And at the same time, India also shall be sensitive to the developmental needs, sovereignty consciousness of the Nepal. So, this can be protected only through the high-level visits. If high-level political leadership wants this particular engagement and centrality of an idea of strong relationship, the India-Nepal relations can move towards the new heights. Now, coming to the section 124A. Now, the Supreme Court has given certain limitations in Kedarnath case about use of the section 124A. It has clearly stated that the sedition charges can only be filed if the words uttered have a direct relationship to the incitement of violence. But however, the state is misusing the section 124A and it is framing the anti-state actions, agitations against the policies and actions of the government as anti-national, and it is creating an environment of dissonance, an environment of intolerance in the country. So, the section 124A shall be seen as a limitation on the freedom of speech and do not fall in the reasonable restrictions under Article 19 subclause 2, and it has to be scrapped from the Constitution. And with regard to this article, the Prakash Karath clearly sees how the students' movement has changed. Now, with access for the Dalits and tribals to the elite educational institutions in the country due to the effort made in 1970s and 80s, the debate and dialogue in the universities is becoming more inclusive and is more focused towards the weak and marginalized. Now, coming to the Syrian issue. Now, from February 27th onwards, a ceasefire is supposed to come in force in Syria. Now, with the existing situation, how good this ceasefire will be, how stable this ceasefire will be. Now, the first thing is, the Assad, with the support of Russia, it is on the gaining side. And opposition, along with the United States, is on the losing side. And on the other hand, the Saudi Arabia and Turkey, they have their own stakes in throwing away the Shia-dominated Assad regime. So in this context, the world view in regard to the Syria between United States and Russia is very different. United States, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, they want to overthrow the Assad regime. On the other hand, Russia wants to continue the existing state apparatus to maintain the stability in the post-Assad or Syria. So in this context, now Saudi Arabia, it wants to have a Sunni-dominated Arab world. So it is trying to obstruct to the growth of the Iran. On the other hand, Turkey is worried about the Kurd nationalism which is going on its soil. So from this perspective, everyone has their own national interests not to make this ceasefire to work. So the ceasefire is going to be a short-lived one according to the author. Now, fertilizer subsidies and agriculture in general. The author argues that the ease of doing business index has improved India's status majorly due to the reforms which are undertaken, but agriculture is left behind. In this context, we have to scrap the APMC Act, Agricultural Produce Marketing Committees Act, which has generated many intermediaries and making the agricultural produce costly and also depriving the benefit to the farmers. Now, I am not discussing the APMC Act completely over here, and if possible, refer to your last year economic survey. A model APMC Act was put in place, and you can go through that in detail. And next is, we shall take the technology in the aid of the farmers, and the subsidies, especially excessive use of urea, can overcome with removal of the fertilizer subsidy or streamlining of them. The cash transfer scheme for the subsidies can be a good idea. And on the other hand, we are carbohydrate surplus country, that is, we are producing more rice and wheat and importing the oil and pulses. So in this context, India has to go towards the import substitution with regard to the edibles import. In this, it has diversification of the crop and increasing the production of oil seeds and pulses has to be given a priority and it has to be incentivized. So these are the suggestions given by the author towards the upcoming budget. So thank you very much and all the best. Hope you are enjoying the Indian Express series. I mean, right. Thank you very much.